Alright, so let me take you through something that happened to me. Something that still messes with my head. But I'm able to cope with it now. It's been a while since I wrote anything down like this, and I'm not a writer, so bear with me if it's a bit all over the place. Anyway, this thing that happened to me this summer, it's like it was straight out of one of those creepy posts you read online, but it wasn't fake. It was very, very real. It was in the middle of summer, and my parents had left for the weekend to our place in Cape Cod. It's only about a 2-hour drive, so they'd leave me home alone for a couple of days sometimes, and I never minded. I had everything set. Some food my mom made, pulled pork and pasta, some cash if I wanted to order pizza, and of course, I had my Xbox, so life was good. I played all night the first day, up until 3 a.m., and when I woke up the next day, I realized it was already past 1 in the afternoon. I had plans to play street hockey with my buddies at 3, so I rushed to get up, barely keeping my eyes open. Now, I'm the kind of person who takes forever in the shower. Seriously, I can be in there for ages, especially when my parents are gone. So there I was, scrolling through Reddit, Twitter, whatever, just killing time, until I heard the sound of the front door opening. Now, the bathroom is right above the back door, and I'm telling you, the door is loud as hell when it opens. It's one of those old doors that creaks and groans like it's been around for a century. I froze, just laying there with my heart pounding. I was supposed to be alone, right? So I stayed still, holding my breath, trying to figure out if I was just imagining things. A couple of minutes passed, and I didn't hear anything else. No footsteps, no voices, nothing. I figured it was probably the wind, or maybe my parents came home early. I wasn't exactly worried, but I was a little freaked out. So I turned off the shower, wrapped myself in a towel, and made my way down the stairs, trying to be as quiet as possible. The stairs to the kitchen are old, and every step creaks like a horror movie, so I took my time, trying to move carefully, slowly, until I reached the second-to-last step, just before I could turn the corner into the kitchen. My heart was pounding like a drum at this point, and I was talking myself down, telling myself that nothing was going on, that I was overthinking it. And then I turned the corner into the kitchen. Standing there, not even 5 feet away from me, was a man. He wasn't moving, just staring straight at me. And that smile, I'll never forget it. It wasn't a normal smile, but a twisted, stretched grin, like he'd been holding it for hours. But the worst part wasn't his face. No, it was his arms. They were so wrong. They weren't just hanging by his sides like normal. He had them twisted behind him in this sick, unnatural position, like they were bent backward, the elbows almost facing outward. It was like he wasn't even human anymore. I can't even explain it right, but it was like something was off about him. I don't know what I was thinking, but I just acted. I lunged at him and punched him right in the jaw, or at least I tried. I didn't know what else to do. He didn't react though. I just saw him slightly rock back on his heels. That's when my body kicked into overdrive. I ran up those stairs faster than I've ever moved before, not even thinking about the towel I dropped in the kitchen. I slammed my door shut and locked it, throwing a chair in front of the handle like in the movies. My heart was racing so fast I could barely breathe. I grabbed my phone and called 911, nearly crying, telling the operator what happened. I was shaking like a leaf, sitting against the door, my eyes locked on the gap beneath it. I could see the shadow of his feet through the gap, and then nothing. The light from under the door stopped moving. He was standing right outside my room. I could feel my stomach twist into knots as I sat there, frozen. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but I couldn't even move. It was like my body just shut down from the fear. The 911 operator was still on the line asking if I was okay, but I couldn't even speak. I just stared at the gap, praying that whatever was outside would go away. I don't even know how long I stayed there, too scared to move, barely even breathing. And then, after what felt like forever, I heard footsteps again. But this time, they were moving down the hall toward the front door. I didn't know if I should feel relieved or still terrified. I just stayed there, staring at the door, too scared to check. And then, there was banging on the front door. I heard the voices of 2 officers entering the house, calling out, and I knew I was safe. Finally, I opened the door, and there they were. I almost broke down right there. The rest of the night is kind of a blur. I don't remember much except that my parents never left me alone again after that. I started double-checking the locks on the house before going to bed, every night. But the worst part? They never found the guy. Even after working with sketch artists and going through lineups, no one ever identified him. It still freaks me out, thinking about it. I keep looking out the window, half expecting to see him standing under a streetlight, still smiling. I don't know what he wanted, I don't know who he was. I just hope I never meet him again. Alright, buckle up, because this one's going to get even weirder. This story takes place when I was about 12 years old, living in Kansas. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but my sister and I have a knack for attracting all sorts of weird stuff. Nothing major, but enough to make you wonder what the hell is going on. So I figured I'd share this one, and honestly, I might have a few more stories in the future if I feel like creeping myself out again. So, back then, I was home alone on a Saturday afternoon. My parents were out running errands, and my sister was at work, leaving me alone with my two dogs. One was a scrappy little terrier, the other was a fluffy Bichon Frise. Not exactly guard dogs, more like early warning systems, but that's all I had. It wasn't a big deal. We lived in a decent part of town. No one was going to rob us, right? It's Kansas, not exactly a hotbed for crime. Well, except for this one time when some assholes spray-painted KKK graffiti on a public park. But that's another story. Anyway, I'm sitting in my room, full on in gamer mode, playing Halo. I had a bag of Doritos in one hand, the controller in the other. Life was good. That is, until I heard something that changed everything. I heard my door open and then close, just like someone walked in. Now my room was at the back of the house and it faced away from the front door. So I couldn't see anything. But the dogs jumped up and bolted into the living room, so I thought, oh, my parents are back early. You know how it is, they've got that certain way of opening the door. But when I called out to my mom, there was no response. That's when things started feeling off. My dogs didn't bark like they usually do when my parents come home. They didn't make a sound. That's when my gut told me something was wrong. I didn't want to panic, but my 12-year-old mind was already starting to freak out. I paused the game, walked out into the living room, and looked around. Nothing. I felt this weird, prickling sensation on the back of my neck. Something wasn't adding up. I heard the door open, and I was pretty sure I wasn't imagining it. Plus, why would my dogs just run off like that if it was nothing? So I did what any sensible kid would do. I went into my parents' closet and grabbed the shotgun. Now, keep in mind, I was just a dumb 12-year-old, and I didn't even know where my dad kept the shells. So there I was, holding an unloaded shotgun, hoping it looked convincing if anyone came at me. Real smart, right? As I walked back into the living room, my mind started to spiral. What if this was real? What if someone was in the house? I didn't know what to do, so I tried calling my dad. No answer. Tried my mom. No answer. I even tried calling two of my best friends just to hear a human voice, but they didn't pick up either. At that point, my imagination kicked into overdrive, and my brain went straight to, oh God, they're all dead. I was freaking out, thinking the worst. For the first time ever, I dialed 911. I was shaking, tears threatening to spill as I explained to the operator what had happened. She told me to stay calm, that help was on the way. But how could I stay calm when I knew there was someone in the house? I stood in that living room, holding the shotgun, trying to stay still. But there was a hallway near the front door, and I just knew that someone was about to pop out and make my day a living nightmare. My dogs were by my side, staring down the hallway like they could sense it too, their little bodies stiff with tension. The room felt suffocating. Every second stretched on for what felt like an eternity, my mind spiraling further into panic. The operator's voice on the phone kept saying, stay calm, but it didn't help. I couldn't stop imagining someone creeping around the corner, ready to pounce. And then I heard something that made my heart stop. The front door creaked open. I froze. My dogs froze. The only thing I could hear was my own heartbeat, pounding so loudly in my chest, I was sure the person on the other side of the door could hear it too. But then, thank God, the door slammed shut again. I heard my dad's voice, and then the front door swung open. My parents were back. "What the hell are you doing?" my dad said as he walked in, clearly surprised to find me standing there with a shotgun. I explained everything. How I thought someone was in the house, how I was scared out of my mind. My dad immediately grabbed his pistol, which I didn't even know he had. "Thanks, Dad." And we started going room by room, clearing the house like we were on some SWAT mission. I thought it would be cool to do something like that in a video game, but in real life? Hell no. Every time we opened a door, I was convinced someone was going to jump out at us. We searched the house, every room, every closet. We found nothing. When the police arrived, they told us that there had been a series of break-ins in the area. Apparently, people were waiting for homeowners to leave, checking the doors, and if they were unlocked, they'd just stroll right in and take whatever they could find. They said whoever it was probably heard me in the house and bolted when they realized someone was home. But something about that didn't sit right with me. If they were leaving, why didn't I hear the door open again? I only heard it close once. That didn't make sense. After that, I started triple-checking every door and window whenever I was home alone. I wasn't taking any chances. But there's a little twist to this story that I never thought about until later. I was telling one of my friends what had happened, and he said, "You only heard the door once? You probably heard them leaving, not entering. They were already in the house when you heard it." That thought? Yeah, it didn't help at all. Whoever it was, I never saw them. And honestly, I hope I never do. To the person who walked into my house that day, wherever you are, let's never meet again. This one's a little different. It's not just creepy, it's straight up chilling. It happened when I was 12 and my older sister and I were home alone for the weekend. It was the kind of scenario where you'd think everything was fine, normal even, but then something happens that flips your whole world upside down. It started off like any other Saturday. I was in my room, restless, waiting for a friend to pick me up. She was supposed to be there any minute, but she was already late. So there I was, staring out the window, checking my watch, waiting for her car to show up. It's funny how your mind works when you're just sitting around doing nothing. Your mind starts playing tricks on you, making you more anxious than you need to be. So when the knock on the door came, I jumped. My heart skipped a beat. Finally, I thought, she's here. But when I ran to the door and flung it open, it wasn't my friend. Instead, there was a man standing there, clipboard in hand. He had on a green and purple shirt with bold stripes, looking like something straight out of a kid's show, like the host of Blue's Clues or something. But that didn't register with me at the time. I was too caught up in the disappointment of waiting for my friend, so I barely paid attention to how strange this guy looked. He told me he needed to check our gas meter. I didn't think much of it. It didn't seem that unusual. After all, it was the 60s, and things like this were common, right? I just shrugged and said, "Yeah, sure, whatever you need to do." I didn't think to question it. I was a kid, and I wasn't paying attention to the details. Like I didn't notice he wasn't dressed like a city official. I didn't think twice about him saying he needed to go upstairs. But as soon as he started walking up the stairs, into the house, something felt off. I didn't think to stop him though. I just thought he was doing his job. Then, out of nowhere, my sister came down the stairs. She had just come back from running errands or whatever, and she looked at the man, then at me, and said, "Oh, is that Daphne's dad? Why is he going upstairs?" I started complaining about how Daphne was so late and how she was always unreliable, but my sister cut me off, looking at the man again, her face going pale. She stared at him for a long moment before asking, Wait, if Daphne isn't here, who is that?" And that's when the blood ran cold in my veins. I froze. "He's here to read the gas meters," I said, trying to stay casual. But my sister's face went even whiter. Her voice was sharp and panicked, and she suddenly flung open the front door and grabbed me, dragging me outside. "Our gas meters are outside," she hissed, her grip tight on my arm as she pulled me away from the door. I was so confused. We weren't even supposed to be outside, and I didn't understand why she was suddenly freaking out. She had a plan though, a quick one. She noticed a man walking down the street, a regular guy. She waved him over, calling loudly into the house, "Oh, Dad, it's good you're home. A man from the city is here to read the gas meters upstairs." Just like she hoped, the guy outside stopped in his tracks, turned around and asked, "What are you talking about?" The man in the green and purple striped shirt bolted out of the house. I didn't even see him run, but suddenly he was gone. The guy on the street, he was a neighbor, a man who worked at the butcher shop, stayed with us, asking us if we were okay, if we needed him to stay and wait until our parents got home. He was really kind, but I couldn't focus on him. I was still processing what just happened. We barely thanked him before we slammed the door shut and locked it tight. I felt a rush of relief, but I could also see how angry my sister was. She was furious with me for letting someone in the house, but she begged me not to call the authorities. She said our parents would be upset because she was supposed to be in charge, and she was worried she'd get in trouble. I didn't want to make things worse, so I agreed. We stayed quiet about it, hoping it was nothing more than a mix-up. But 3 weeks later, a girl in our community went missing. She had been home alone, and when authorities found her house, the door was wide open, no sign of forced entry, nothing. The same MO. It hit too close to home. My sister and I sat down and talked about it. We knew what we had to do. We came clean to the police about everything that happened. The man in the house, his weird clothes, the way he acted, how he went upstairs when the gas meters were supposed to be outside. They took it seriously, and after a little investigation, they told us they had reason to believe it was the same guy. He had been doing this for weeks, looking for vulnerable homes, waiting for the right time to strike. The police also tracked down the man who helped us on the street. We were shocked to find out that we actually knew him. He worked at the butcher shop in town. We'd seen him around for years, but we didn't recognize him in the moment. After all that had happened, he became a lifelong friend of our family. Thank God for his help. Our parents were, well, they were mortified. They weren't angry with us, just relieved we were okay. But they made sure we understood the importance of safety and the rules of caution from then on. They didn't leave us home alone for a while after that, and I honestly didn't mind. I wasn't taking any chances. It wasn't long before the authorities found the missing girl. They said she had been held for a few days and then burned alive. I can't even begin to describe how that made me feel. It made me sick to my stomach to think that guy was still out there, preying on people like us. They never caught him, though. They think he was in his early 30s back in the 1960s, so by now he's got to be long gone. Right? Still, the thought of him being out there makes me shiver every time I remember that day. I just thank God every day for my sister's quick thinking. She saved our lives, and I'll never forget it. I'll never forget the man who thought he could get away with it.